Good afternoon. My name is Karen Howard. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Organic and Natural Health Association. I'm here with Todd Harrison, who is partner at Venable Law Firm and also the president of the association. Today's topic is the most popular of that in the dietary supplement world, CBD and hemp products. We're here having a second conversation with our members, our guests, and clients regarding what the future of CBD and hemp products looks like, what the compliance strategy currently is and should be, and how and why this will benefit the consumers that we all hope to serve for now and in the long term, what the ramifications of quality are, and how best to move forward in a responsible and safe fashion. And Todd, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. And I promised Karen today that I would stay on track with the slides rather than going off the stream of consciousness. I have been accused of doing on more than one occasion. But first of all, I'd like to start with the news that, guess what? CBD is going to make it into a major hamburger chain's hamburgers on April 20th in Colorado. So now we have CBD hamburger. And with that, we're going to start with just a brief overview of how CBD and hemp and marijuana is regulated in the United States. So we start with the Controlled Substances Act and the Farm Bill of 2014. What some people need to remember is that until USDA gets all their regulations in place, technically saying the controlling act is the Farm Bill of 2014, not 2018. So marijuana, it was defined under the Controlled Substances Act as all parts of the plant cannabis sativa, whether growing or not, the seeds thereof, the resins extracted from any part of such plants, which would include cannabidiol, cannabinoids, the terpenes, etc., unless it is from the seeds of such plants or any other compound of the seeds. Under the Controlled Substances Act, CBD products derived from the non-psychoactive, non-resin mature stalks, fibers, or seeds of the cannabis sativa plant do not meet the definition of marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act. The mere presence of cannabinoids is not itself dispositive as to whether a substance is within the scope of the Controlled Substances Act. The dispositive question is whether the substance falls within the Controlled Substances Act definition of marijuana. DEA has also stated, based on scientific literature, it is not practical to produce extracts that contain more than trace amounts of cannabinoids using only the parts of the cannabis plants that are excluded from the CSA definition of marijuana, such as oil from the seeds. And what we're going to do later on, we're going to show you some interesting information that would suggest that a lot of CBD products may actually be coming from, you guessed it, marijuana. So why we're having this brief review of Controlled Substances Act. The 2014 Farm Bill is a much different creature than the 2018. So when you look at it, it defines industrial hemp as the plant cannabis sativa, any part of such plants, whether growing or not, with a delta-9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. This is significantly different than the definition under the 2018 Act. It was done for the purpose of research conducted under an agricultural pilot program or academic research permitted by state law. There is no actual provision to permit the interstate sale of industrial hemp across state lines or to commercially produce industrial hemp products, but people did it anyway. And pretty much it was ignored by most federal and state regulators that had the appropriate programs in place. So we come to the 2018 Farm Bill, which everybody in the United States, I think, right now thinks it legalized marijuana, including my children. Plans imposed by, but what really did the 2018 Act do? Well, plans imposed by the state or by the Department of Agriculture to regulate hemp production, but hemp is defined much differently. Hemp is defined as cannabis sativa L, any part of that plant, including the seeds thereof and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomer, salts of isomers, whether growing or not, with a 9-delta THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. So in reality, where the 2014 bill really just went to the cultivation and growing of hemp, The 2018 goes a step further and it actually is controlling the production of extracts, of cannabinoids under the Act. However, the repeal of the industrial hemp research provisions at 7 U.S.C. Section 5940 is not for 1 year until after the Department of Ag regulatory scheme is established. But we're now into April, and we have not even any proposed regulations. I appreciate that USDA has promised that they'd have things in place by the end of this year. We can only hope that is true because technically saying right now the act that controls is 2014. The conforming amendments to the Controlled Substances Act to exclude hemp from definitions of the marijuana and under the Controlled Substances Act. So what are the main takeaways? Producers of hemp will require a license from the state or from the federal government. Please note the definition of a hemp includes extracts in the words growing or not, which is a clear indication that an ingredient supplier cannot ship an extract that is 0.3% or greater, 0.3% THC or greater in the hemp product. The term producer is used in the Act rather than the term grow. This is very, very important. That means if you are producing, if you're a manufacturer and you're producing an extract and you are shipping that extract into interstate commerce, that extract can't be at 1.3%, even if the finished product that's going to be marketed by a company is going to be below 0.3%. In reality, the THC content of that ingredient that is being exported across the United States to other states has to also be below 0.3%. That is the plain meaning. The Secretary, by regulation, will, based on legislation, may decide otherwise and limit the cultivation, but it's difficult to see how that can be achieved. But once they come out with their regulations, one can hope that maybe they'll let higher levels, as long as the finished product that is being marketed to consumers is below 0.3%. The restrictions on THC content is not simply limited to any plant that's cultivated, but any extracts derived therefrom. This means that the extraction process must limit the THC content in the finished extract before it is even shipped. Processes will need to be in place to ensure for the proper disposal of THC in the extract, and the THC itself cannot be destroyed by the extraction process. So in other words, if during the process you have two different streams, one that takes off the THC and one that has the cannabinoids in there, or cannabidiol or the terpenes in it, there's going to have to be regulations in place to make sure that that THC doesn't get outside the plant or is properly disposed of. This means potential significant issues unless addressed in the regulation by permitting the shipment of low concentration of extracts. I don't think people have really scrutinized this bill very closely and what this act really means, because it does place some burdens on the manufacturers of the extracts and how we're going to control for the THC content. And the state's going to have to come up with a program to make sure that the THC that is being eliminated from the product are properly disposed of if it is not completely destroyed by the extraction process itself. It will take time for the government to issue the regulations and issue licenses. We know that. We may be in a situation where the USDA and states will exercise enforcement discretion, and I know there's been some discussion about that because FDA is exercising its enforcement discretion, which is kind of odd since they send a bunch of warning letters to companies, but that, well, the states will follow suit. The problem is the states are not following suit right now. There are states that are enforcing still against CBD, and they don't really care what FDA thinks right now. There are local jurisdictions that are taking issue with CBD being put into foods in restaurants, et cetera. So there's not a lot of enforcement discretion going on at the state. So let me dispel that misconception. There are a lot of states that are using enforcement discretion, but not all states. And everybody has to understand that all states have the ability to regulate CBD and hemp to any way they feel fit. On top of it, the Farm Bill of 2018 does not solve the issues with the FDA, as it unambiguously gives FDA authority over hemp products. What does that mean? Well, that means that your extracts or the hemp, if it's used in food, has to be generally recognized as safe or FDA-approved food additive. Or two, if it's used in a dietary supplement, if it's a new dietary ingredient, that it meets the definition, the reasonable expectation of safety. If you can establish it's an old dietary ingredient, then it's an unreasonable risk of harm. So what has happened, and what are the complications? Well, Idaho State Police seized nearly 13,000 pounds of hemp that was produced in Oregon and was en route to Colorado. Colorado has an existing industrial hemp program on the cultivation of industrial hemp consistent with the 2014 Farm Bill for research purposes. Hemp is considered a controlled substance under Idaho law. 2018 Farm Bill provision is supposed to allow transportation of hemp and hemp products. No state, it says, shall prohibit the transportation or shipment of hemp or hemp products produced in accordance with Subtitle G. Hemp company argued that the transportation of hemp across state lines was protected under the 2018 Farm Bill. There are no federally approved state programs that the seized hemp could have been produced in accordance with. The judge sided with the state and denied the Big Sky's motion for a temporary restraining order. Now, maybe when it all comes down, the court will see better, but they were not able to get their product released. The Arizona Board of Pharmacy on December 5, 2018 agreed to remove provisions that required dietary supplement producers to be registered with the state under the state drugs provisions. Arizona agreed with trade associations that FDA has broad authority over dietary supplements, that the state will not interfere with the rules that contradict that authority. Texas Department of Health halted plans to issue a guidance restricting the sale of CBD-infused food in the state. Texas currently restricts the distribution of CBD to low-THC cannabis by patients with intractable epilepsy when prescribed by a registered physician. So where we are in the states is that each state has their own rules. I know that a colleague of mine in another firm is dealing with a county in the state of Florida on CBD issues, as well as another colleague in another firm dealing with Georgia with CBD in county. So these are very local issues. Warning letters. So FDA has concluded based on the available evidence that CBD products are excluded from the dietary supplement definition under Section 201 FF3B2. Under that provision, if an article has been authorized for investigation as a new drug for which substantial clinical investigation has been instituted and for which the existence of such a has been made public, then products containing that substance are outside the definition of dietary supplements. FDA just reiterated this 2 weeks ago in new warning letters. Admittedly, they sent the warning letters to companies that were making more egregious claims, but FDA's position has not changed any. FDA, guys talking about FDA marijuana questions. Can products that contain THC or cannabidiol be sold as dietary supplement? FDA says no. FDA drug approval Epidiolex was in 2018. FDA approved the first CBD-derived drug, Epidiolex. FDA Commissioner Gottlieb emphasized the importance of the drug approval process for other product developers who want to bring further American-derived products through appropriate drug development programs. There's been a lot made about what Gottlieb said over the last 4 months before he left being commissioner of the FDA. But what is ignored by industry was something that he said to Congress. He said that this most likely requires a legislative fix. Now, putting aside whether I agree or disagree with the commissioner on this, the FDA's position is, okay, we're going to hold these hearings, but we still think this is a legislative fix. And I think that's not going to change anytime soon. So Epidiolex drug molecular structure. So this is what Epidiolex looks like from a molecular structure-wise. Is a cannabinoid that is naturally occurring in the cannabis sativa plant. The cannabidiol is a white to pale yellow crystalline solid. It is insoluble in water. It is soluble in organic solvents. So this is what Epidiolex is. It's sold in basically it concentrates 100 milligrams per milliliter. Is basically taken at 10 to 20 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So that gets to our what is the exclusions under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Under 201FF, as we discussed, approved as a new drug. Well, CBD was on the market clearly before Epidiolex was approved. But it also goes to authorized for investigation as a new drug, antibiotic, or biologic for which substantial clinical investigation has been instituted. This is the wording here is very important. Have been instituted. It didn't say that you had to be at phase 3 clinical trials or phase 2 clinical trials. It says have been instituted. Now, I think there's an argument to be made if you were only to institute phase 1 clinical trials and then abandoned it, that wouldn't be substantial. But if you go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 and you get a drug approval based on that, then I believe that the actual date would be the start of the phase 1 clinical trials, not the phase 2 or phase 3 clinical trials. Therefore, even if article was clinically investigated, it was marketed as a food or dietary prior to those investigation, it meets the definition of a dietary supplement. Then we have 301LL, which is a little bit different. It doesn't use the term article, it uses the drug. Arguably, the word drug is broader than the word article and could potentially exclude a non-standardized hemp extract because it contains naturally occurring drug constituents. Excludes an FDA-approved new drug, antibiotic, or biological. The FDA, at its discretion, can approve its use in food. This is very, very important here. FDA still has the ability under 301LL to approve its use in food. It's unclear whether 301LL applies to dietary supplements. One can make a pretty strong argument that it does because 301LL because supplements are a subcategory of food, and 301LL was enacted after DSHEA. So generally, the act that basic statutory construction is that if an act it follows a different act, that act controls. But then again, there's also, if there's an act that is more on point, that act is supposed to control. So it's anybody's guess for 301LL. But regardless, there's clearly a pathway here for allowing CBD isolate in products or even or hemp extracts in the food supply. And maybe that's what FDA is going to discuss on May 31st. Maybe it's not. I think it's going to be more of a listening session. Understand, there's already a pathway that FDA has in place that could be utilized today. Somebody could file a food additive petition with FDA because that would require FDA to issue a regulation that would allow CBD to be used in food and under what conditions CBD could be used. So FDA really doesn't need to do anything. FDA could do it right now. They have that provision there. They could also tweak the GRAS notification process to allow the notification, and if they're satisfied that it's okay to consume on a daily basis at certain areas, FDA could tweak that to issue a regulation allowing the ingredient to be marketed. So this idea that FDA doesn't already have the regulatory processes in place doesn't ring true to me. They already have that authority, and they already have some processes there they could use. They're choosing not to, and industry is choosing not to push the issue at this point. From my perspective, this is going to happen at some point or another. I think the company that goes to FDA first is going to be the company that wins. That's just my opinion, because everybody extracts that I have seen over the last few months, they're different. They all have different standardization rates or specifications. Some have terpenes in it, some do not. So that the ingredient that makes it through the FDA gauntlet is the one that's going to become the preferred ingredient at some point. So what's also important here is that neither Section 201FF nor 301L applies to cosmetic products. Therefore, you all can add it to any cosmetic product you want, as long as you don't make any structure function claim for that cosmetic product. So now we get into the game that you can't say it helps reduce fine lines and wrinkles. It helps reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. So you could put CBD in there, in topical products, but you can't put it into a topical product and say it helps alleviate pain. That makes it a drug. Now, you could put it in a massage oil, and we could probably come up with language that would help with that. A soothing massage oil containing CBDA to help rub away your pain, or massage away your pain. Whatever you want to do goes to the massage, not to the product itself. So topicals are going to be regulated differently. There's no such exclusion that exists at this time. I should also talk briefly about pet products and pet animal products as well. So we see an explosion on the pet scene of CBD products. First of all, please make sure if you're marketing a CBD product that you've really tested for THC, because it will kill your dog. THC will. So make sure that you're at least making sure there's no THC in your hemp extracts that you want to sell to owners. The other issue is that adding it to food is really problematic because each state has its own regulation. You gotta give them your label for them to review, and they have to sign off on it. Unless you don't want to give it to the state and just market your product on the internet, which is what a lot of companies do. But animal products are much different. FDA is also in a bit of a conundrum here. On the one hand, they can't say, for instance, DSHEA does not apply to animal supplements, but on the other hand, say that because it's precluded under DSHEA, it's precluded in animal supplements. If they can't have it both ways, DSHEA either applies or it does not apply. So I know that FDA would be very interested in if somebody actually filed a showing safety in animal product. I think that it's going to require species-specific tox studies or safety studies of a 9-month term, about 9 months long to a year long. But it's something that we should do because we really don't know what CBD will do for an animal. Yes, they have an endocannabinoid system just like we humans do, but they're much different. And so people should be careful as they move forward and make sure that whatever dose they're saying is okay for their dogs, that they have sufficient safety information to support that. It's the least we can do for our animals moving forward. So what is CBD? CBD is one of many different cannabinoids present in the cannabis plant. CBD oils or extracts are often purified to isolate CBD from other naturally occurring cannabinoids. The drug exclusion applies to the same active moiety. Gosh, what does that really mean? Distinguishable active moiety drug exclusion does not apply. Non-standardized full-spectrum hemp extract with only the THC, fiber, and water removed are in the best position, because that is not the article that was approved or has been under clinical investigation. I think FDA has a hard argument to say that just because it contains CBD is excluded. If Congress had met the term active moiety or just at any level, they would have said so. But I think Congress was trying to strike a balance, that they didn't want to exclude potential things that could be used in the food supply that maybe not have pharmacological value at low doses, but would have pharmacological value at high doses. And what we know about CBD doesn't seem to have a lot of pharmacological value at low doses. It seems to have a lot of value at high doses, but not low doses. So I think that's one area that we can look at. I think FDA may permit significantly lower level CBD than what is approved as a drug. FDA may conclude that it's not safe at any level. Again, one of the things that FDA asked as far as the hearing, as well as in submission of comments, they want safety information. The worst thing you can do to any safety agency is not provide them information for them to understand the safety. Because Epidiolex at high levels raise some safety concerns in FDA's mind, such as potential of liver toxicity. So where is that potential? What dose? These are valid questions that FDA is asking about. And the industry as a whole it would be in their best interest to come together and let's do the safety studies. I'm not talking about human safety studies. I'm talking about animal studies. Let's go through and do the chronic studies and do the necessary studies to show that this is not going to present a risk to humans if consumed on a daily basis. Because understand, it's consumed on a daily basis. FDA made it clear that the FD&C Act would permit FDA to authorize an ingredient for use in food and dietary, even if it's approved for use in drug. Likely will require a system petition process. And, again, I think you could probably utilize the food additive regulations at this point. Companies seeking authorization will be required to prove safety. That's not a lot to ask at this time, especially since we now want to put it in our hamburgers. This goes back to Commissioner Gottlieb announced FDA's new steps to advance the agency's continued evaluation of potential regulatory pathways. In doing so, he announced the development of an FDA working group on CBD, which intends to start sharing information and findings as early as summer of 2019. I like working groups, but all this does is going to create other issues, because the one thing I haven't talked about here is that we all still have a credit card processing issue in the United States on CBD products. Because even if FDA has enforcement discretion, there are still companies having a hard time getting domestic processing for their products. But as we know, the three primary areas of focus of this hearing will be health and safety, manufacturing and product quality, marketing, labeling, and sales. I think it's really important that everybody who has information show up and give testimony. More information the agency has, the better off. But don't believe this is the end-all, be-all. Submit your comments. I believe comment period closes July 2nd? It's either July 2nd or July 3rd. It's always nice when they close it right before a holiday. FDA likes to do things right before holidays. So do most other federal agencies. Hemp and CBD products, key differences and considerations. Other type of hemp-based products, hemp seed oil, hemp protein products, hemp plant extracts, non-resin, non-standardized extracts or oils of the mature stock, non-standardized for CBD content. Hemp seed oil, great source of omega-3s and other interesting fatty acids. Hemp protein products, great. FDA has sent out having nice life letters on hemp seed oil and hemp protein, so these don't raise a lot of issues to the agency. Key difference from CBD. Maintains natural, so if you're a non-standardized extract, you're trying to contain the natural constituent ratio. Content of CBD is not isolated and concentrated above natural ratios to other cannabinoids. CBD and other cannabinoids and hemp plant components in the end product are naturally occurring. Non-standardized hemp has been historically available in the food supply in the form of butters and oils and as a source of protein. I think that is a good argument to be made. Potential regulatory issues implicated by key differences. Clinical investigations of CBD drugs do not apply to non-standardized hemp extracts. History of marketing of non-standardized hemp products in the food and supplement predates clinical investigations. Even if these hemp products were considered new dietary ingredients, they would be exempt from the notification requirement because of the history of use in the food supply. There's also evidence of a lot of cannabis extracts from the 1920s and 1930s when they were illegal. One could argue that those extracts themselves would establish that they could be considered that hemp extracts or cannabis extracts, minus the THC content, are old dietary ingredients. All you have to do is go online. You can find lots of different bottles out there in pills, actually, of hemp products that contain cannabis. So these are all things that, as part of comments to FDA, people should be pointing out to FDA, because we have to get FDA over this idea that these products are excluded from because of the clinical trials by GW Pharma. FDA risk factors and key considerations. Claims. Warning letters to CBD manufacturers have included egregious claims, disease claims, anti-tumor causes, cancer cells to commit suicide, arthritis relief. Don't talk about the opioid addiction crisis and say that this is an answer for pain relief. There's a whole such thing. We need to tone it down, the rhetoric down. Remember, dietary supplements cannot be marketed as conventional food and must be ingested. Cosmetics are topically applied with limited claims. No structure or function claims. So, if you are selling a vape product, that's a CBD vape product. If you make a claim for that product, you are a drug. If you don't make a claim for that vape product, well, arguably FDA can't regulate it because it wouldn't fall under its jurisdiction. But the minute you make a claim that it helps with smoking addiction, for instance, now you're a drug. You can't put CBD in a topical patch and slap it on and make claims for it. You could put it in a topical patch and make no claims for it, but the minute you make a claim for it, doesn't matter whether it's a structure or function claim, it's a drug, and you're violating the law. The same thing with a cosmetic. You can talk about moisturizing, reducing the appearance of fine line and wrinkles, but you can't talk about how it reduces inflammation at the skin or helps. I saw a CBD product the other day for rosacea, a topical one for rosacea. You can't make those claims for a cosmetic product, period, let alone the CBD. You should comply with CGMPs. Consider applicable state laws. While I tend to agree somewhat that there are states that are going to exercise enforcement discretion as they change their regulatory schemes, there are going to be other states that are not going to exercise enforcement discretion until their laws change. Part of the problem is how they define their Controlled Substance Act, and their Controlled Substance Act may very well include hemp as a controlled substance or CBD separately as a controlled substance. Imported products carry a higher risk of detection, and always take the risk that if you are importing a finished product with CBD in it and you're making a claim, could potentially be detained at the port. And that's a general rule for anybody importing any dietary supplement. FDA is going to give a lot more scrutiny for a product coming into the United States out. So, for instance, if you're making a claim for oxidative stress, which I believe is a perfectly permissible structure function claim, and I think I win that case in court, FDA will stop it at the border because they think oxidative stress is a disease. So I'm going to turn it back over to Karen here because these are some interesting things that we've learned about CBD and its category and what we have found in testing over 200 different CBD products and all the contaminants that it may contain.
So as Todd has said, many of the companies out there producing product now are relying upon self-affirmed graphs as being sufficient to protect consumer interest and their legal issues that they might have arrive at their doorstep, which in large part is going to be true for companies that are very high quality. That doesn't have any bearing, however, on the overall industry and what's transpiring out there currently and what will continue to grow as a problem for the entire industry. This information has been collected by Ellipse Analytics on behalf of our friends at Clean Label Project. Alan Lewis was hoping to be here today, had a conflict. He's with Natural Grocers on the board of Organic and Natural and is very engaged in what the state of Colorado is currently doing in terms of retooling its regulatory authority. And from this, what you can see is the elements that they've been testing for, the ability of how low they can test. Some of you are more familiar with that than others in terms of how many parts per billion they can actually measure. And then the number of companies that are, or the products of the 200 products that are actually finding detection of these carcinogens in large part. With that comes the ratio of the percentile, which is that 90% or fewer of the companies are scoring in that parts per billion category. So it gets quite concerning when you look at this list, including arsenic, lead, and then by the time you get down to phthalates, you're being quite concerned about what is transpiring there. The only thing that I can suspect is that these are products that may be encapsulated and encapsulated with a product with a plasticizer in it that would create that phthalate. Also of great concern is then, of course, the CBD claim levels that are on these products that they were able to measure. So essentially what they were able to do through their own processes that I don't have access to that information is evaluate not just what we're talking about in terms of contaminants and toxins, but also label accuracy. And with that data, it was found that it ranged from 0% of what was on the label claim to over 300% of what was on label claim. You can sort of see that reflected in the scatter graph. So clearly there's an issue, if you choose nothing else to assess by this, of whether companies are adhering to GMPs. And whether they have GMPs becomes actually of primary interest. I think we are all aware what transpired with the number of years where the GMP process was not heavily monitored by the FDA, if at all, and the resulting criticism of an industry where there are many more good players than there are bad. So already you can begin to tell that this is going to be a huge threat to the viability of the industry, the CBD products, and the hemp industry as well. We're already hearing reports of synthetic products coming in from overseas. It actually puts the organic industry at risk as well, as companies are striving to maintain their excellence standards with organics and source organic product. When companies start to label organic and there's no authoritative rule around organic CBD products because, yes, indeed, they are not dietary supplements. I guess my point for all of this would be Organic and Natural Health has a real strong commitment to making sure that the consumers get what they want, that the quality of the products can be demonstrated, and that it is a process of continual quality improvement for all of our members to adhere to the highest quality standards. And from this, I would suggest that by banding together, the quality companies that we know are on the phone and vested in this completely, we can probably make greater strides in terms of penetrating the regulatory law. Might be, I've watched too much Game of Thrones in the last week, but the reality is that when FDA speaks to a legislative solution as an efficient pathway, that raises all kinds of eyebrows in terms of the legislative process being efficient. And in that statement, leaves out the part that a legislative solution also requires a regulatory solution as well. So there is no fast way to get this done, but there is an efficient way to be able to demonstrate the safety. And collectively, while that may be expensive on an individual basis, certainly more expensive than individual grass, we think that if people would band together under the Organic and Natural Health Association mantra, that we could make progress much faster.
And yeah, I think I'm going to go back to. I think we should all really be concerned that total THC was being detected at a level that causes that product to be a controlled substance at 41%. That's a lot of products out there. And, you know, the quickest way to bring down any industry is to have an illicit drug in your product. And we should all really be concerned about this. And this is why I think that it's important that whoever you're getting right now your extracts from, that there's traceability back to some state that had licensing that the hemp really came from a hemp product and not from marijuana. And that you can show that. And it also is why I think it's important that USDA start issuing these regulations, because requiring people to have licenses will then allow us to be able to better police our supply chain, because you can then trace back that to assure that that extract was made, when it was made, was less than 0.3%, and that the hemp it came from, well, the cannabis it was came from was less than 0.3%. It's just very important. I think that ingredients of manufacturers have to start testing their products as well to make sure they're not shipping something in excess of that. Now, if you are a company that is you're doing from you're getting whole hemp in, and then you're making your own extract and then putting it into your own finished product, well, I think then it's your finished product. But if you are bringing in that extract, then I think you have a duty to make sure that extract is below the 0.3%. And you should require your manufacturer of that ingredient to provide you with that information. Otherwise, this total THC issue is going to become a real problem for the industry. Last thing we need to do is have people failing drug tests, which they're already starting to fail drug tests because of it. It's just another way of regulators saying, aha, this industry is not very well regulated, when we know that it is well regulated, that by far the vast majority of companies want to do a good, honest job, and they do. But CBD right now is kind of out of control, and so it's going to be up to individual companies to police and tell FDA gets its act together, quite frankly, and does something that makes sense, because I don't think they can put the cat back in the hat. 2 years ago, they could have put the cat back in the hat. Today, they cannot. It's not, the public's not going to stand for it. So it's time to move on, and it's time to set up a regulatory process. Like I said, I think there's processes already in place that FDA could use or can easily adapt to use for this process, and we can get some rational regulation around the ingredients themselves. That's not even talking about the ridiculous claims that are made for CBD products, and being able to, whether you can actually substantiate those claims at the dose levels that I'm seeing out there. So that is our presentation for today. We're ready for questions. Okay, so we have, do we know which state we should use for clinical investigation of CBD? My opinion, FDA is going to use the date for Sativex, which is when they initiated their phase 1 clinical trials. I think that was back in 2006. I don't think that Sativex is an appropriate drug to be basing that on. Sativex is a different animal. It is cannabidiol and THC. I think that, quite frankly, we should get away from trying to argue that which date applies. Rather, why don't we start arguing it's not the article that's approved as a drug or the article that was under investigation? Because what was under investigation was significantly higher. But if I was going to say I was going to use a date, it would be somewhere around 2006. I don't think that it's phase 3 clinical trials. I think it is phase 1 clinical trials, but it's abandoned after phase 1 that I don't think the substantial part of it is. But the wording the way the statute reads, it says initiated. It doesn't say phase 3. It says initiated. Initiated would mean phase 1 clinicals. Then we got recently over 70 pet supplements products were launches, not following AAFP standards, but following health remedy pathway. Yet there is limited to no scientific data supporting use. Do we not run the risk of causing a problem and the FDA reacts to the problem? There is no self-affirmed GRAS information that I know for pets. That's true. There's not. And, as far as dosage form product go, this doesn't understand how FDA looks at dosage form products. The FDA believes dosage form products are unapproved new animal drugs of low enforcement priority. In other words, FDA will continue to allow such products to be marketed as long as, quite frankly, you follow the National Animal Supplement Council's recommendations. And you have a very good advocate in the NASC with CVM. So I agree with you. I think CVM is concerned about safety data. They want to see safety data, and we need to start developing it, especially because we know the endocannabinoid system, that at least for dogs, is much more sensitive than it is for humans. So we should start looking at these things very seriously.
The other piece of that is, should there be a contaminant in the supply chain for CBD that is deterrent to dogs' health, it'll show it faster through the NASC than it ever will on the human side, and it will be the same supply chain.
That's true. And that's an important thing that NASC has done by how they track adverse events. It's done a far superior job. In fact, when the human industry started adopting them, they should have adopted NASC standard because it's by far superior than what anything the humans have in place on the human side. And NASC has been willing to share that information with the human side. So, are you seeing actions against marketers or potential risks to marketers for aiding and abetting sales at this point? I'm not sure if you're talking about the retailer or you're talking about the marketer. If the marketer is the person that is name on the product, they're a private label distributor. The one risk that everybody has out there right now is that you have FDA stating that these products are not lawful. There's something called plaintiff attorneys out there, my friends, and they have already started sending letters out telling people that they're in violation of the law because FDA, they're marketing unapproved new drugs. So, and under most state Deceptive Trade Practices Act, it's a deceptive trade practice to violate federal law or regulations. If we're talking about the retailers, no, I have not seen that. I've seen in Arizona, they go into vape shops and seize product. The Arizona authorities have. But nothing at the federal level. I've not seen them go after retailers. And generally, the times I have seen and the things I've heard about retailers is that they'll go in, a local DA or police will go into a retail site and say, you have to remove that from your shelf. They're not taking action against companies themselves. Though the state of Texas did go after some consumers of CBD. It's Dallas, Texas. What do you expect? They had the Cowboys. Is the 41% of the total THC product that exceeds what part, or is that would exceed 0.3%? So they're exceeding what would be considered legal, and not a controlled substance.
Right.
We just gave you the part per million of it.
Right. That's the level that they can measure to.
Yes. That's their detection, rate of detection. So this is are there other cannabinoids besides THC and CBD specifically excluded from marketing and dietary owing to an IND or ongoing? I'm not aware of any dealing with CBDG or CBDN, or quite frankly CBDA, which if anybody really knows, CBDA is the precursor to CBD. I'm not aware of any, and clearly if they are, they've been after the fact. So I think those cannabinoids are probably going to be fair game for the supplement industry and the food industry, especially if they can show that they're safe. And quite frankly, people that I know who know these things very well think those actually ingredients probably have more potential for promoting the overall health of individuals than CBD. Well, I don't know why CBD is where it is today, other than people think it's legalized marijuana. But it is where it is.
It would be a shame, given how little we do actually understand about the endocannabinoid system, if all of the garbage and the hamburgers that we're dealing with now actually shut down an industry where we have little opportunity then to go back and be able to do effective research that shows the real value of what it is that we're learning.
I understand, like in New York, the state ag commissioner said that you could use chocolate, but the city of New York said you couldn't, and they went after a bunch of companies, restaurants in New York. Yeah, well, New York is New York.
Mm-hmm. Texas. That actually does lead to an interesting point, though, in terms of we haven't seen any activity out of the attorneys general yet. Although we are watching very closely to see if anyone gets excited about that as well. So it is, as you all know, we have been subject to the whims of varying surgeons general before it could easily become the issue again. So
yes, the 41% of the products, yes. Yeah, to answer your question, yes, 41% of the products tested above the 0.3% THC levels. And we're not going to give out the name of the companies that were tested. No, they have been informed, according to my understanding of the policies and procedures, that Clean Label Project and Eclipse Analytics, we're using this as a gift. They've gifted us this information for your use. But the process is they go back to each company and let them know what their test results are, as I am advised. So have any standardized lab methods been established for testing for CBD in food? Not that I'm aware of. Standardized, not that I'm aware of. I come up with validated, each lab, a lot of labs will come up with their own validated, but I'm not aware of anything that has been published yet. I have not seen anything published. This has yet to be published as well, but it is scheduled to be published. Here, okay. So clarification on the one question on marketers. Somebody was asking about the liability to an ad agency. No, we have not seen anybody go after an ad agency, but understand that if you were to run an ad in Idaho, that'd probably violate their Controlled Substance Act, and they could arguably go after the advertising company, the people who do it. But I haven't seen that, so I don't think it's not something that the FDA would generally do or the FTC would generally do. But you can't rule it out. It could go down all the way to the ad agency, especially if the claims are not truthful and are deceptive. So if you're making a claim that your 10 milligrams of CBD helps with anxiety, and let's just pretend for a second anxiety is a structure-function claim. If you can't substantiate that claim, then you've got liability with the Federal Trade Commission as well as the state AGs. And the Federal Trade Commission said they could go down the chain or up the chain, however you want to put it. So the question is, as you mentioned, standardized hemp extracts come in different composition, therefore different safety profile. Given this, what do you expect FDA to do pursuing a regulatory pathway? I think what FDA is going to do is they're going to want people to file GRAS notifications on, or so let's take my position that non-standardized hemp extracts are not the article that was approved as a drug. I think that FDA would expect either a GRAS notification or a new dietary ingredient notification on that. It depends how broadly the GRAS notification is written to FDA. If you were to fall within the contours of that notification, then, or a regulation that was issued, then you wouldn't have to submit it separately. So it really just depends how broadly or how different the extracts would be from company to company. I would imagine you could come up with many different profiles. But there's a way you could also have specifications that block certain areas. If I was doing something and I was going forward with FDA with a GRAS notification or a regulation or anything like that, I would make it as narrow as possible to my ingredient, for people just simply could not piggyback on my ingredient, considering there's probably no patent protection. So from that point of view, I would pursue something that was as narrow as possible that I could show safety on, for everybody else can't just jump on the bandwagon. You know, how are some companies, I don't know, I'm not going to say the company's name, how are some companies get away with shipping in most states? Okay. You know something? I'm asked that question all the time about various different things. It's not unique to marijuana, to CBD or anything. The fact of the matter is, all states, all governments, all agencies have limited enforcement dollars. And they tend to go after the low-hanging fruit. They don't tend to necessarily go after those companies that, they're in violation, but, you know, it's not egregious. So, kind of just like speeding down the highway, if you're going 90, you might get pulled over. If you're only going 65 and a 55, they'll probably let you go. There's no rhyme or reason to enforcement action. But agencies have to pick and choose like everybody else. And no, it's not unconstitutional for agencies to have selective enforcement. And that's life. I hear that argument. Well, the government can't selectively enforce. Yes, they can. They do it all the time. Otherwise, we'd all be in jail. For speeding, I should say. No, these products are being marketed pursuant to those state laws. They'll most likely be marijuana. They'll most likely be CBD for the marijuana. I don't know. I don't know the answer. How do you view the red yeast rice case to impact CBD issues? Okay, red yeast rice. This is how I view red yeast rice. Let's look at what happened in the red yeast rice case. They were marketing lovastatin at the lowest prescription strength of lovastatin. So therefore, they were making lovastatin. We're not making Epidiolex. We're not making Sativex here. So I think the Cosmetic case is far different scenario. Here, if you were to start marketing, 20 milligrams per kilogram body weight. So let's just take the average kid who might have epilepsy. Let's say he's 40 kilograms. You're talking a minimum of 400 milligrams of CBD and more than, or as utmost as 800 milligrams of CBD. That is not the same as 20 milligrams in a full spectrum hemp extract. So I think that's how you differentiate that case, is that the red yeast rice case was clearly about a company that was manufacturing lovastatin under the guise of it being a naturally occurring constituent. They came up with a process that specifically was intended to market lovastatin. And by the way, if you saw the warning on that label, it was lovastatin's warning. So a much different situation, in my opinion, and very distinguishable. Now, I admit FDA is going to hold that out as an example, but I think that's a very distinguishable case between that and a full spectrum hemp extract that contains all the terpenes in it, everything else. You're not standardizing a high level of CBD into the product. You have, 20 milligrams, maybe 40, maybe 50 milligrams at the most in the product. That is not the article that was investigated as a drug. That's plain and simple. And again, I said TVAX, that is clear. That's just a different beast. The THC throws that off significantly. A lot of questions. There's a lot. Let's see. All right. Okay, no, go back and answer that. Is there a way of, or do they have to say that? I think that, yeah, I think we've answered anybody. Are there any other questions that I haven't answered? It looks like I answered all of them. Okay, well,
What happened to our contact slide?
Hmm?
And if people want to reach us?
If people want to reach us, they can reach us. My email address is taharrison@venable.com. My direct dial is 202-344-4724.
My email address is khoward@organicandnatural.org, and my phone is 202-256-0479.
And put a plug in for Organic and Natural. They are setting standards for a wide range of things, from the glycosides in your products to helping with vitamin D research and omega-3 research and helping with deficiencies in that area. It's a unique organization. It's unlike the other trade associations, so I really encourage companies to go check them out. And I think that you would be pleasantly surprised, because they are truly, truly dedicated to traceability and making sure that the products that we have on the market are safe and are as contaminant-free as any natural product can be these days. And there's always going to be contaminants.
Thank you for that.
One second. Would university ties in your study relate to bringing a new to market be more valid than May? Tristan's. Look, anytime you get a university involved to regulators, that always looks better. I'll be honest with you. It's not necessary. Ultimately, it is whether a university is used or private companies are used. It really goes to the level of work that's done and how well the studies are performed. So, Nutrisource is a good place to go. Spherix is a good place to go. The Burdock Group. These are all people that can help you do an extremely good job of developing your safety studies, and as well as clinical stage if you're looking for efficacy as you move on. I think that there's an added level of comfort that they get from universities, but understand one thing about universities, it's publish or perish. And so if it's a combined safety and efficacy study that you're looking to do, understand they're going to publish the results regardless. You can't bury them. All right, well, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. And would the site be available on Venable's website as well as Organic and Natural?
We can make that available on our website,
yes.
Absolutely.
So it'll be both. So what's your website?
Organicandnatural.org.
Organic Natural, and it's venable.com. Thank you very much. Thank you.